All right. I think Dortmund is next, right?
Yeah, let's do Dortmund. So we've got quite a lot of Dortmund fans get in touch after that 1-1 draw against Wolfsburg. This is the game that I watched, so I've got plenty of things to say about it, but probably going to be here for 10 minutes just reading out these comments, so just bear with me.
Before we say anything else, before we go bad on Dortmund, there's one positive I want to point out. Niklas Fullkrug is looking like in real good form right now. That's one positive.
So I'll just read out these comments and maybe we can just use that to kind of frame how we want to talk about this game. Ken says, another frustrating end to a Dortmund game with points left behind. I was surprised by the methodical one-speed play on the attack in the final 10 minutes, and again, too much lateral passing and nothing going forward. And I still don't understand how they continue to struggle with defending set pieces. Kobel saves, and then there's 4 or 5 Wolfsburg players waiting for the rebound with only one Dortmund player near the ball. Benjamin says, tactics seem to continue to be lost in the wilderness. I cannot fathom the reason to bring Fullkrug off for Mukuku. 2-striker look was needed, not more of the same. Joel says, and he's agreeing to Benjamin actually, I think, I agree, I would have taken off Brandt. It's not his best game in coming back from illness. And then Jonathan says, same bad performance all year, regardless of what the results have shown. And it has to be nearing the point where Vatska and Kell, given he's a likely replacement for Vatska, decide that Terzic has to go. I totally understand the squad is simply not good enough, but at the same time, Terzic's job is to get the best out of the players he has to work with. It's hard to argue that he's coming close to getting the best out of them because there isn't enough talent to perform better than this. Also, the lack of attack-minded players is totally against Dortmund's DNA because Dortmund and high-octane offensive play are one in the same in my and many others' minds. It would be a tough decision because he's such a likeable guy, but character only goes so far when on-the-pitch performances are this bad and the football being played is this far from the club's typical styles. So I think those 4 guys have actually summed it up really well, Manu. This was a match which I thought Dortmund more or less struggled with since they scored the goal, which, as you said, Fullkrug again. And, it was an interesting game because I thought, considering the way the Wolfsburg have been playing recently, they've struggled for points, they've struggled for results. They themselves have looked like a team who are just waiting for the head coach to be sacked. But in this game, it was the complete opposite. Wolfsburg looked like a team who had cohesion. They knew how to play. They knew how to pass around Dortmund. They created a huge amount of chances. They finished the game actually with a higher XG than Dortmund. And if I'd plopped someone down in front of this game who had never seen a Bundesliga game before and said one of these teams is nosediving towards relegation and on the verge of sacking their head coach, and the other one is pushing for top 4, they would have probably said Wolfsburg with a team pushing for top 4 and Dortmund with a team in trouble. And I've got to agree with Jonathan and Joel, Benjamin and Ken in the sense that it was yet again another game in which Dortmund's just kind of looked lost for ideas. I actually summed it up on Twitter by saying they're sleepwalking to irrelevance. That's just honestly how I feel Dortmund are this season.
Yeah, I think that last point that you make is actually right on. Because I think Terzic's biggest fortune this season is that you have a Leverkusen team that is rocking the league, walking towards the title, and you have a Bayern Munich team that is continuously shooting themselves in the foot and producing a ton of headlines, and he can try to live in the shadow of that without having to worry about too many consequences. Because how many people are talking about Borussia Dortmund at the moment in the context of the Bundesliga, right? Any other season, they would now be trailing Bayern Munich by this amount of points, and the title race would be over, and we would be complaining about Tuchel's boring football, but it wouldn't matter because, we would be focusing on Dortmund making it too easy to them. But I think because we have Leverkusen and we have all this drama in Munich, Terzic is almost getting a free ride. is it just me who feels like that, or is it, like we have almost forgotten talking about them because they're irrelevant? They're irrelevant to what's going on in the Bundesliga. They're not even irrelevant in the Champions League race because, oh look, there's Stuttgart. Hey, actually, could Stuttgart catch Bayern Munich and finish second, right? And so they're not even relevant in that conversation. And so, yeah, I think you summed it up so well. They're just irrelevant. Like, we haven't even spent as much time talking about them recently because we've been so focused about this Leverkusen Bayern Munich title race. And I think that is something that Dortmund, I think Terzic and Dortmund are maybe saying, okay, well, great, we're out of the spotlight, but you're out of the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. And as I said, the one positive about this Dortmund team is that Füllkrug is in fantastic form, which is good news for Germany because all of a sudden you have 2 or 3 strikers who could lead this team in the Euros next summer, right? But everything else about this team just screams boring and irrelevant.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point actually about how they've been able to hide more or less because Leverkusen have stepped in as the title contenders elect and obviously done a much better job of it than Dortmund have in over the last 10 years, I guess. And yeah, and the kind of sad thing for Dortmund is that it's almost as if they prefer that. They prefer not being in the limelight. They prefer not having any attention on them. And the sad thing is that it's not even like they can just go about their business and slowly but surely pick up results because they've been more or less. It's not as if Terzic has gone away and rebuilt his team or pulled together a system during the winter break and they play a different style of football or tactics or formation. It's just more of the same old stuff. And I think what the guys are getting a point out, particularly Jonathan in the comments, is really important actually about the way Terzic plays football. The really weird thing about Terzic at Dortmund is that, and we've talked about this during the group stages of the Champions League, and I'm sure it'll come up when we cover the Champions League games this week, but the most comfortable I've seen Terzic or Terzic's Dortmund is in the Champions League when they come up against these huge clubs and they can play super defensively and react to the tactics the other team are bringing towards them. Whenever Dortmund have been asked to kind of break teams down or to dominate games or to be a possession-based side, they really struggle. And you can see how that links in so easily with the mentality of this club right now, where absolutely nobody wants to be kind of stand up and be counted as the second biggest club in Germany, which they more or less are by just about any metric. And I mean, that was on show in this Wolfsburg game. And the thing that really baffled me is that obviously, Wolfsburg score an equaliser just after the hour mark. And Terzic's decision to kind of try and win this game was to take off Marco Reus for Özcan and play Özcan and Emre Can in central midfield. Now, maybe passionate Dortmund fans could make a case for a formation where Emre Can and Özcan should be playing in midfield together. Maybe if you're playing in the Champions League against Real Madrid or Manchester City, that's a good move. But when you're trying to win a game against Wolfsburg away from home, what possesses you to bring on Salih Özcan instead of Marco Reus? And it's not even as if he then brought in more forwards there. He brought in Bino Gittins to replace Sancho. Okay, fair enough. Sancho had a pretty terrible game. And then he brings on Mukuku to replace Füllkrug. Füllkrug probably the only player who seemed really interested in doing anything in the final third. But if you add all those players together, he's actually took off one forward for a defensive midfielder and replaced 2 other forwards with 2 other forwards. So Dortmund actually had fewer attacking players on the pitch after his substitutions, and
in a 1-1
it must
draw.
drive. Yeah, and it's exactly why Wolfsburg finished the game in a much stronger position than Dortmund did. So it's entirely baffling, and it just kind of leads to my constant criticism of Terzic that these teams don't really seem to have any cohesion, and they simply rely on individuals to be outstanding. That's what Füllkrug has done in the last kind of couple of weeks. It's what Jadon Sancho did when he came in and got those 2 assists in his first 2 games. No one was really outstanding in this game, but I think the one candidate was maybe Maatsen at left back, and the way that I've got their pass maps in front of me, and he was really the kind of
I think he's been a good signing.
I think he's been a good signing too, but I think it's really telling that this young left back has come in and without any real direction or without any real impetus from the coach, the rest of the team have just elected him to be the outball in this team. simply because no one else seems to want it. And in a game in which Marco Reus looked quite jaded, in a game in which, as I think it was Joel that maybe said, Brandt was coming back from a serious illness, there was no one else in that team that was really standing up to be counted. And it's just really turgid stuff. It's really depressing stuff, and I can completely understand why Dortmund fans are sick of it, but it also just leads to this wider issue with Dortmund where no one really seems that interested in getting them back to where they should be in German football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like the Mukuku for Fullkrug one is something that baffles me because there's strong evidence out there that the two of them actually play really well together, right? So I can't remember which game it was, but it was one of the few good performances by Dortmund where they started together, and it actually seemed really. It was like really kicking off. So, yeah. I mean, I think this is also one of the main criticism fans have in general. I mean, when we had Matt on the show too, he points it out quite often, right? It's the like-for-like replacements and uncreative substitutions that bothers a lot of Dortmund fans. And this is just another example. And you know what? At the end of the day, they're going to sleepwalk to a top 4 finish. And that will be enough. Will be enough
as long as the accountants at Westfalenstadion are happy, then who cares what everyone else thinks?
Yeah, exactly. So that's just how it's going to be at Dortmund as long as someone like Watzke is counting the money. Think of Uncle Dagobert sitting in his big safe.